Silly me, I went and did it again. Spirit of 420 here. I forgot to tell you the title of this episode. Spirit of 420 presents The Night My Wife Nearly Died. Yep, that's it. I don't really have anything else to say right now except enjoy a good bowl on me. And enjoy the episode. Bye-bye. Hello again, everyone. Spirit of 420 here, because everything I do is so 420. And as my intro says, of course it doesn't say it, so I will speak it. The facts that I share on here are 100% true, and I can prove it, and the opinions are mine. Can't have them, but you're more than welcome to share them. So, let's get right into it. You know, part of why I'm doing these stories in the beginning is because really y'all don't know me yet. I'm extremely motivational, inspirational. Obviously, as a salesman, I'm very persuasive, tend to be quite funny. But my comfort zone yet isn't there because I'm not talking to real people. You know, I can talk to 1 to 1,000 people in real life, and it's no problem. Talking to a camera, I'm learning and finding that comfort zone. And it may take a little bit of time. And of course, part of what I'm doing here by telling these stories is introducing you folks to me. Why would you believe anything I have to say without getting to know me? You know, and what is it I want you to believe? Well, the number one thing that I want you to believe is that there's multiple things, but the number one is that God is real. Number two, you individually are special. And number three, everything we do has a purpose, good or bad. The good only happens because of the bad, and we have to keep that in mind. So, moving right along on that note, you know, I will be sharing a lot of stories here early, but I'm probably going to start doing some live, live casts or whatever they're called, live stream. There you go. Sorry, get with the day, dummy. Bottom line, I will start doing that here soon, and I'll probably retell some of these stories for the people that want to chat and ask questions and all that kind of good jazz. So know that if there's a story that you like or something that you want to hear again, you know, please leave a comment and let me know. But again, I'll probably be redoing them as time goes on. But I figured some of the big stories were necessary to go ahead and start giving you guys a real understanding of, you know, my belief in God and how it came to be. The one that most clinched it, and what I mean by that is I always had a relationship with God. So I'll preface the story real quick to understand that I always had a preface with God, or a relationship with God. Studied multiple religions. I was raised, I was baptized, if you will, Episcopalian. Ended up going to obviously Episcopalian services, but also went to Presbyterian as well as Methodist. To give you an idea, in 2007, obviously I dealt drugs and never lost God, but had a lot of misunderstandings, if you will, or misconceptions. But what was funny is in 2007, I ended up reading the Quran, and I won't get into all of it right now, but it's the same archangel, Gabriel, that comes to Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. They came to both, King David as well as came to Mary and Joseph. And not to get religious or anything like that, but when I learned all these facts in 2007, I converted to Islam. And I still probably hold that conversion. What I do know is that there is a God. And when, in 2016, my wife, this was part of, you know, this culmination of really understanding God, if you will. But I already alluded to this in an earlier episode, but my wife was hit by a car. It was doing about 40, 45 miles an hour. She was a pedestrian walking across the road, and this car hit her in the middle of a turn. Now, I don't think that she would have survived, number one, had it been straight on, because the centrifugal force was being thrown in such a way that she didn't take the full blunt of the car. But it did hit her, nonetheless, and it threw her, you know, many, many yards, and this side of her head hit the windshield, and then this side of her head, when she landed, hit the pavement. So she suffered a lot of neurological damage. And something I want to backtrack to is before it even happened, we were not in the best of places financially. We were struggling. We were doing the best we could. But like many families, this was 2016, and we were, having some trouble. I was trying to get some projects off the ground. But I did have a job, and my wife had a job. I'll bleep that name because I'm not ready for you folks to know my name yet. or you'll figure it out, but, c'est la vie. Nonetheless, we were having a lot of financial troubles, as I said. That night, she went to my son's football game, booster meeting for football and for other things for the school, and she did not have cell phone service. Like I said, things were kind of tough. But obviously, like many phones, she could Wi-Fi connect. And in lieu of asking another parent to borrow the phone, which I get, everybody has their pride, she decided to walk across the street and was hit. Well, about 8:35, the booster meeting was 8 o'clock, and 8:30 rolled around, and then 8:35 hit, and I looked over my mother, and she looked at me, and we both had the same just deep gutted feeling that something had happened, and she wasn't able to get in touch with me. So I immediately jumped in the car and rushed up to where the school was. And as I was coming to the school, I passed through the intersection, and the ambulance was there. And I already knew it, but I didn't want to admit it. But I already knew that the ambulance was there for my wife, and there was a police car and everything else. But I quickly pulled into the school, which was diagonally across the intersection, and she wasn't there, obviously. And then I quickly went back over there, parked at the scene, and then walked out. By that time, the ambulance had just left. I think I almost saw it as I was waiting at the light. And then, of course, the officer came out, and we exchanged some information. I asked if it was such and such person, and she said yes, it was. So I immediately, and we're at the hospital that she was going to, and I immediately jumped in the car and knew what was going on, and knew that it was a very horrible night. Now, I can go into the details and bore you with that, but the reality is, it wasn't as bad as you would think, considering she was a pedestrian. She only broke her femur. I believe that's what it's called, the backbone of the calf there, the one that's a bow. That one literally got hit so hard that it bowed so much it fractured in multiple places. Other than that, she had no broken bones. She did have a bit of a displaced hip, and like I said, she took 2 blows to the head, one from the windshield, one from the pavement. So there was neurological damage, but she was pretty much there. 3 days later, she was literally walking around, amazingly. But it was very dramatic, and we went through a lot of hell. And like I said, there's still memory loss today. And within days, we were sitting there at home, and I won't go into, again, all the details. I can save that for another time. But there was a particular movie on, and while I was talking to my wife about God and everything happens for a reason, and that this was going to end up turning in, because by then I'd already figured out, we'd actually already talked to a lawyer, spoken to a lawyer, and we knew for a fact that this guy had good coverage. So he was a 20-year-old, he was a young driver, and he made a huge mistake, but he did have coverage, and he had the coverage to take care of my wife and take care of the damages and all the things that occurred, which a lot did. And we knew already, we were talking about it, but it was literally like a sign from God. And that night, we were having this discussion, and multiple things kept just lining up. And that was the first time, and what I mean by multiple things is no matter what instance or occurrence in my life that I could think of that was horrible, it was always the catalyst to a better, even greater event down the road. And I never felt closer to God than in that moment. Now, I've had closer times since, but up until then, I had never felt as close to God as I would, as I did that night. And I truly realized that, I never, from that moment forward, and let's face it, we still have days, we all have those moments, but I really, from that moment forward, knew that 100% without a doubt, there was a God, and that everything was happening just as it needed to happen in order for us to do what we needed to do. We had wanted to move somewhere for a very long time. This settlement ended up coming through, and within 2 years, less than 2 years, within a year and a half, which was very fast too, by the way. Settlements usually take much longer. But within a year and a half, we got the settlement and got to move where we wanted to, and we'd been trying to get there since, I think it was like 2009 when we first discussed moving where we are. So, nonetheless, yep, I know there's that nonetheless thing again. Hey, I'm not perfect, and I'm going to continue to try to do better. But regardless, it really was it was a night of epiphanies. I've told people the story before, and I'll do it live. But it felt like just, to me, miracle after miracle, because it was proof that this had to happen in order for this great thing to happen. And these were life-changing moments many times. And sometimes the bad occurrence was almost as life-changing moment, as the positive. But the reality is it's a balance. You can't have one without the other. How could you possibly know a great day if you haven't had a fucking horrible one? How could you thank God for the great things if you don't thank God for the horrible things? Because you would only know those great things. You only experience those great things because of the horrible things. So, with that said, back on to track of the show. Always try to share something strange. My wife says I'm going to run out of these, but hey, what it is, what it is. But nonetheless, always want to share something strange. And today, I just want to share the fact that it's always have to, numbers. I kind of run my life by numerology, and I don't know if anybody knows numerology, but every number has a base number, and you get that by adding the sum of the numbers. So, like, for instance, if it was 316, the sum of that number actually is 10. And then if you add 1 and 0, the sum of that number is 1. So the base number for 316 is 1. So, when I have a real thing with primes, I have a real thing with 7, that's my lucky number. And I have a real thing for numerology and odds. So, put that all together, like my stereo, I always try to end on odds. Or, funny enough, I try to end on a base number of 7. That's where, so my stereo many times in my car lately now, it stays on 25. If not, it boosts all the way up to 34, and then I'm blasting my ears. But hey, I love loud music. But I just think that's odd, I don't know too many people who run their life so much by numerology. But again, sharing things that are strange. Everything happens for a reason is the next thing I always try to share. So, as I said, I'm going to retell some of these stories, and I will retell this one. Sorry, I'm looking down at you. I got to get better about that. I was playing with my pot. It's something I do when I talk. So, if you can't see it, just know I'm playing with my marijuana. Anyway, everything happens for a reason. So I briefly discussed, and I'll just give her a fake name, because again, I'm trying to also protect those people that I'm telling stories about. But we'll just call her Stacy, and Stacy was my neighbor from the time I was 2 years old, and we started bathing right away. I mean, this was the 70s, so our parents didn't hesitate to bathe us when we were 2 and 3. Needless to say, we ended up being very sexual, playing doctor. I mean, you name it, we did all of it. By the time we were 8, we had been caught completely, 100% naked. And by 11, again, I'm not going to tell the full story. I ended up putting it in for about probably what amounted to 15, 20 seconds at the best. I did not come. It felt very strange. I was 11 years old. So I pulled it out. She told me to put it back in. I said, no. She said, we'd never do this again. I said, no problem. Well, many people would think that is a horrible thing that, now I don't get that. It's kind of a bad time in life, considering this was not only a girl that I shared all these experiences with, but she was quite a best friend. I had 2 best friends, 1 female, 1 male. Lost him the next year. Told you about that. We'll go into it more later. But anyway, I digress. The point is, I came back and visited her. So that was 11 years old. I came back and visited her when I was 18 years old. And she was now 19. Or was I 17? Might have been 17. Either way, at 18. No, that's right. Because the one was just freshly born. So I went back and saw her when I was 17 and she was 18. She now had 3 kids. Started at 16, 17, 18. And funny enough, they were with the very next guy that she started fooling around with. So I ask you, if that's not a blatant miracle in someone's life, I wasn't supposed to go down that track. I had, and the Lord had other plans for me than to, and that's why I made the decision. I didn't know it at the time, and it was horrible. I mean, it was a nasty little breakup, if you will. But, hey, if I hadn't, I'd probably be sitting here with 3 kids and still living in where she's living. So, we'll leave it at that. As I said earlier, I'm extremely strange, and one of my taglines, here I'll give it to you, but it really does come to light because everybody out here is strange in their own way, and most people don't realize just how normal strange actually is. So, with that said, everybody has opinions, and they all smell like assholes, right? Mine stink like coffee and dank ass weed. Thank you again for watching. Till next time, have a great afternoon, great evening, great morning, great whatever time of the day it is for you. Just one last closing thought, and that is literally what it's about, is thought. I have so much I want to share, and one of the ways that I feel like I know God is real is that the thoughts I have in my head are so much more articulate than the thoughts I'm able to verbally share or even write down when I go to do it. Now, I think by recording this and recording, doing these recordings, if you will, doing these videos, I'm going to get better at that. So that's really what I hope to accomplish. Just that last little thought I want to share with you. Thanks a lot again. Till next episode.